Andre Whitfield was 41 years old when his wife told him she was leaving him for a man who actually had his life together. He'd spent 12 years building something quiet, something Brianna never bothered to understand, and never bothered to ask about. She called him unambitious, called him dead weight in front of her friends, not knowing he sometimes heard. She packed her bags for Preston Vaughn, her CEO, a man who wore $3,000 suits, and promised her the life Andre supposedly couldn't give her. That night, alone in his office, Andre pulled up a file he hadn't needed to look at in years, the ownership records of Vaughn Creative Media. And there it was, in black and white. He owned the company. He owned Preston. His wife had left a man worth $500 million for an employee who answered to him. Andre closed the laptop. He didn't say a word. Not yet. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The coffee was hot. The house was quiet. Andre Whitfield sat at the kitchen table with a mug in one hand and his phone in the other, scrolling through overnight market updates the way most men scroll through sports scores, numbers, positions, a small adjustment to a fixed income allocation he'd been watching for 3 days. Nothing dramatic, nothing that needed to be rushed. That was the thing about real money. It didn't move loud. The kitchen around him was clean, but plain. White tile that had yellowed slightly at the grout lines. A refrigerator with a small dent near the bottom handle from the time they'd moved it themselves, instead of hiring movers. A window above the sink that looked out onto a narrow backyard with a fence that needed painting. From the outside, it looked like the home of a man who was doing okay. Comfortable, maybe. Nothing more. That was the point. His truck sat in the driveway, a 2017 GMC Sierra with 94,000 miles on it and a small rust spot above the rear left wheel well. He kept meaning to get that fixed. He kept deciding it didn't matter. What mattered was the office down the hall. The one Brianna called his little room. 12 by 12 feet of unremarkable space, with a standing desk, 2 monitors, a locked filing cabinet, and a direct line to the legal and accounting teams at Sterling Crest Holdings, the private investment fund he'd quietly built over 14 years, the one that currently managed just under $500 million in assets across 7 portfolio companies. Brianna didn't know about Sterling Crest. She knew he managed investments. She knew he worked from home. She thought that meant he was small. He'd never corrected her. She came downstairs at 7:43. He heard her before he saw her. The sharp click of heels on hardwood, the cloud of perfume that arrived a half-second before she did. She was dressed in a fitted blazer, the color of deep burgundy, tailored close at the waist. Her earrings were new. He noticed that. Small gold drops he hadn't seen before. "Morning," he said. She opened the refrigerator, stared into it for 4 seconds, closed it without taking anything. Then she picked up her keys from the counter. He looked up. "You eating? I'll grab something at the office." She was already checking her phone, thumb moving fast across the screen, a small smile flickering at the corner of her mouth before she caught herself and let it go flat. "Long day again?" "They're all long days, Andre." She said it without looking at him. Then she was gone. The front door closed behind her. Not a slam, just a click. Somehow that was worse. He sat with his coffee another minute. Outside, he heard his wife's leased Audi back out of the driveway. The car whose monthly payment came from her salary as marketing director at Vaughn Creative Media. A salary that, by his quiet estimate, did not fully account for the blazer, the earrings, or the perfume. He noted it, filed it, went to work. The souring hadn't happened all at once. That was the thing about 12 years. Things changed the way paint peeled. Slowly. In small pieces. Until one day you stepped back, and the whole wall looked different. It had started maybe 2 years ago. Little comments at first. "Don't you want something bigger than this?" And "My coworker's husband's just made partner." And the one that landed with the most weight. "I just thought we'd be further along by now." Further along. As if he'd been standing still. The late nights at the office had started 8 months ago. Once a week at first, then twice. Now it was 4 nights out of 7, and the explanations had stopped coming without him asking for them. His mother noticed before he let himself. 2 Sundays ago, family dinner at her house. Pot roast, too much salt, the same floral tablecloth she'd had since 1987. Brianna had sat across from him scrolling under the table the entire meal, phone hidden below the edge like a teenager. His mother, Loretta, had watched her for a long moment from the head of the table with the particular stillness of a woman who had seen a great many things and chosen her words carefully. After Brianna excused herself to take a call outside, Loretta set down her fork. "Something is wrong with your marriage," she said, simply, like she was noting the weather. "Mama, I'm not asking you a question. I'm telling you what I see." She picked her fork back up. "You do with it what you want." He'd told her she was reading into things. He'd driven home that night reassuring himself of the same. Brianna was stressed at work. Preston Vaughn ran a demanding shop. It wasn't unusual. He'd almost believed it. That evening, after dinner, Andre sat at the kitchen table with the laptop open to the shared bank account. A habit, routine, every 2 weeks. He moved through the charges the way he moved through everything, methodically, line by line. He almost scrolled past it. The Harlow Hotel. 289 words. Posted Thursday. Thursday. The night she said she'd been working late at the office. Andre stared at the screen. He didn't move. He didn't say anything out loud. He just read it again. And then again. He closed the laptop, set both hands flat on the table, and sat very, very still. Andre didn't move for a long time. The kitchen was dark except for the glow of the laptop screen. The house was quiet around him. No television, no music. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of his own breathing. The Harlow Hotel. 289 hours. Posted Thursday. He read it one more time. Then he stood up, carried his mug to the sink, rinsed it, and set it in the drying rack. He turned off the kitchen light. He went to bed. He didn't sleep, but he didn't say a word. That was the difference between Andre and most men. He'd learned it the hard way, over years of watching deals collapse because somebody got emotional at the wrong moment. Feelings were real. He wasn't made of stone. But feelings without facts were just noise. And he refused to make noise until he knew exactly what he was dealing with. So he didn't confront Brianna. Not the next morning, when she came down in another new blouse and left without eating again. Not the day after, when she texted at 6:30 to say she'd be home late. He said okay. He made dinner for 1. He ate it slowly. And 2 days after finding the charge, he made a call. Marcus Webb worked out of a plain office above a tax prep shop on the east side of the city. No sign on the door. No website worth mentioning. He came recommended by Tobias, Andre's college friend and the attorney who handled most of Sterling Crest's quieter legal work. Tobias had said only 2 things about Marcus. He's thorough, and he doesn't talk. That was enough. "I need a week," Andre told him over the phone. "Movements only. Locations, times, who she meets, photos if there are meetings." "Understood," Marcus said. "Nothing else?" "Nothing else." That was all. The days that followed had a strange kind of stillness to them. Andre went about his routine. Market opens, portfolio reviews, a call with his accounting team on Tuesday, dinner with his mother on Wednesday, where Loretta watched him with careful eyes but didn't push. He appreciated that about her. Brianna moved through the house like a woman who had already made a decision she hadn't announced yet. She was lighter somehow, almost cheerful in a way that had nothing to do with him. She hummed while she got ready in the mornings. She slept facing away from him every night. He noticed all of it. He filed all of it. He waited. Marcus's first report came on day 4. A plain email. No subject line. 3 attachments. Andre opened them at his desk. In his office, the door closed. The photos were clear. Brianna and a man in a parking garage, her leaning in close, his hand at the small of her back. The same man outside a restaurant 2 nights later, helping her into the passenger seat of a black Porsche Cayenne. A third photo, the entrance to a hotel called the Meridian Grand. Both of them walking in together at 8:14 in the evening. The man was tall, mid-40s, good suit, wide shoulders, the kind of easy confidence that came from being told you were impressive for most of your life. He had a jaw like a magazine ad, and the posture of a man who was very aware of that fact. Preston Vaughn, Brianna's CEO, her boss at Vaughn Creative Media. Andre sat back in his chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then he looked back at the screen. He read Marcus's notes below the photos. Brief, factual. Marcus had done some background listening through a contact. Someone at Vaughn Creative who talked more than they should have. According to that contact, Preston had been telling Brianna he was worth millions. A portfolio of properties, investment. A man on his way somewhere big. He'd been promising to divorce his wife. Promising to take care of Brianna once that was done. He'd said it like it was already settled. Like it was simply a matter of logistic. Andre read that part twice. He felt it in his chest. A slow, deep pressure, like something heavy being placed on top of him. Not rage, not yet. Something quieter and worse than rage. The understanding that someone he had shared a bed with for 12 years had looked at the life he built and called it not enough, and then walked into the arms of a man making promises with other people's expectations as collateral. He sat with that feeling for exactly as long as he allowed himself to. Then he breathed out through his nose, slowly, and set it aside, because there was something else. Preston Vaughn. He knew that name, not from Brianna's stories about the office or her complaints about long weeks. He knew it from somewhere that had nothing to do with her at all. He pulled up his secure investor portal on the second monitor, the one with 2-factor authentication and an automatic timeout. He logged in, navigated past the main dashboard, and opened the folder labeled Portfolio Holdings, Active. He typed Vaughn Creative Media into the search field. The results loaded. His hands were perfectly still. The results loaded, and Andre didn't move. The screen cast pale light across his face. Outside, the neighborhood was completely still. No cars, no wind, just the quiet of a Wednesday night, deep in the middle of the week, when the rest of the world had already gone to sleep. Brianna was upstairs. He'd heard the shower running an hour ago, heard the creak of the bed frame after that. She was asleep now, probably dreaming about whatever she thought her future looked like. He looked at the screen. Vaughn Creative Media, Portfolio Entry 11. Acquisition date, March 2019. Stake held, 51.0%, controlling interest. Held through, Sterling Crest Holdings, LP. Status, active, 51%. He owned the company, not a small piece of it, not a silent slice sitting in some corner of a spreadsheet. The controlling stake. The majority. Preston Vaughn, the man in the good suit with the wide shoulders and the Porsche Cayenne, the man who had his hand at the small of Brianna's back in a parking garage, ran a company that Andre quietly, legally, and completely controlled. He pulled up the executive compensation report from the most recent annual review. He found Preston's line. Base salary, $310,000. Standard performance bonus structure. A company car allowance. Nothing extraordinary. Good money, sure. More than most people would ever see. But not portfolio of properties money. Not, I'll take care of you money. Not Meridian Grand Hotel and black Porsche Cayenne and new jewelry money. Andre opened a second window and pulled 3 years of quarterly investor reports side by side. He read through them the way he read everything, methodically, without rushing, letting the numbers tell their story. The company was modestly profitable. Revenue had grown. But executive distributions beyond Preston's stated salary were minimal. There were no large personal draws that would explain the lifestyle Marcus's photos had documented. So, where was the money coming from? He leaned back in his chair and pressed his fingers together in front of his mouth. The irony of it was almost too large to hold all at once. Brianna had spent the last year looking at their modest house, their used vehicles, their quiet life, and she had decided that it meant Andre was going nowhere. She had measured him against the appearance of Preston Vaughn, the suits, the car, the confidence, the promises, and she had made her choice. She had walked away from a man who controlled a $500 million fund. She had walked toward a man who answered to that fund. She had no idea. Not even close. Andre felt the weight of it settle across his chest, heavy and strange. It wasn't satisfaction. Not yet. It was something more complicated than that. The particular pain of being underestimated by someone who was supposed to know you better than anyone. 12 years, and she had never once asked, never dug past the surface. She'd seen the truck and the modest office and the plain routine, and she had filled in the rest herself. He had let her. That was on him, partly. He knew that. But letting her misread his life was one thing. Watching her hand herself over to a man who was running some kind of fiction, that was another thing entirely. Because the numbers in front of him were clear. Preston Vaughn was not what he was selling. His salary didn't support his lifestyle. His company didn't explain his spending. Something else was happening, and whatever it was, it had Brianna in the middle of it without her knowing. He closed the investor portal. He closed the compensation report. He sat in the dark for a moment and looked at his hands on the desk. Then he picked up his phone and called Tobias. It rang twice. "It's late," Tobias said. His voice was unhurried. He'd always been that way, calm at any hour, like a man who had decided long ago that nothing was worth panic. "I know," Andre said. "I need to talk." A short pause. "Give me a minute." Andre heard movement on the other end. A door closing. Tobias giving himself privacy. "All right," Tobias said. "I'm here." Andre told him everything. Not with emotion. Not with the weight of it bleeding into his voice. He laid it out the way he'd lay out a deal. The facts, the sequence, the evidence Marcus had gathered, the hotel charge that started it, the photos, what Marcus's contact had said about Preston's promises. And then the part that changed everything, the cap table. Sterling Crest's controlling stake. The compensation figures that didn't add up to the life Preston was projecting. Tobias was quiet through all of it. That was the thing about Tobias. He listened like listening was a skill he'd practiced. When Andre finished, the line held silence for a moment. "How do you want to handle this?" Tobias asked. Andre looked at the dark window across the room. His reflection looked back at him, faint and still. "I need you to help me find out exactly how Preston Vaughn affords the life he's selling my wife," he said. "And I need it done quietly." Tobias arrived at the Sterling Crest office at 7 in the morning, 20 minutes before Andre had even asked him to be there. That was Tobias. He showed up early, and he showed up ready. The Sterling Crest office sat on the 14th floor of a glass building downtown, deliberately understated for what it was. No logo on the door, no receptionist in the lobby. Just a frosted glass panel with a suite number, a keycard reader, and a long conference room inside with a view of the city that most people would have killed for. Andre had never bothered to hang anything on the walls. Tobias set his briefcase on the conference table and looked around the room the way he always did when he walked in, quickly, taking inventory. "This space never changes," he said. "Doesn't need to," Andre said. Tobias sat down. He pulled out a legal pad and a pen, the same way he always did. Like the act of writing things by hand kept them more real. Walk me through what you want, Tobias said. Andre sat across from him. Between them on the table were two printed documents, the Vaughn Creative Media cap table and the executive compensation summary from the most recent annual review. Andre had highlighted nothing. He didn't need to. He knew the numbers by memory at this point. I want a full audit, Andre said. Run it through the investor relations channel. Frame it as routine due diligence, quarterly review, nothing unusual. They get those requests from Sterling Crest every 18 months. Preston's team won't question it. And the real goal? Find out where the money is coming from. Andre tapped the compensation sheet once. His salary doesn't explain his life. I want to know what does. Tobias wrote something on his pad. I'll bring in Raymond Coates. He's the forensic accountant I used on the Harlow situation 2 years back. Precise and quiet. He doesn't talk. Good, Andre said. 2 weeks to get through the books properly? Take the time you need. I don't want gaps. Tobias nodded. He capped his pen and looked at Andre with the steady, direct look of a man who had known him for almost 20 years. You doing all right? He asked. It wasn't a soft question. It was a practical one. Tobias asking whether the personal side of this was going to create problems. I'm fine, Andre said. Tobias picked up his pen again. Then, let's get to work. The next 2 weeks moved slowly on the surface, and fast underneath. Andre kept his routine. He drove his truck to the office. He took his calls. He reviewed other positions in the Sterling Crest portfolio. He came home to a house that felt emptier than it had before. Not because anything had changed yet, but because he now saw it differently. The silence that used to feel peaceful had a different quality now. It had an edge to it. Brianna came and went. She was distracted. Bright in a way that had nothing to do with him. He watched and said nothing. Meanwhile, Raymond Coates worked through Vaughn Creative Media's books with the quiet focus of a man who understood that numbers didn't lie. Only the people recording them did. The first irregularity turned up in the client retainer accounts. Tobias sent the file on a Thursday afternoon, encrypted, with a short message. Call me when you've read this. Andre read it at his desk with the door closed. The pattern was clean once you knew what you were looking for. Transfers out of client retainer funds. Money clients had paid the company in advance for services not yet delivered, moving into a separate account labeled under a vendor name. Crestline Advisory Group. It sounded real. It looked real if you glanced at it quickly. But Crestline Advisory Group had no employees, no registered office address, and no evidence of any services rendered to Vaughn Creative Media. It existed on paper, and nowhere else. From Crestline, the money moved again, into a personal account registered to Preston Vaughn. The transfers went back 14 months. Small ones at first, 8,000 here, 12,000 there, then larger as the pattern held without anyone noticing. Over 14 months, the total came to a little over $340,000. Andre read the figure twice. Then he looked at the itemized list Coates had attached. Restaurant receipts matched to company entertainment accounts. Hotel charges, several of them at the Meridian Grand, where Marcus's contact had confirmed Preston and Brianna meeting. Jewelers, private car services, a weekend rental in the mountains in January, billed as a vendor relations retreat. It was all there. Every piece of the image, every part of the life Preston had been selling. None of it was real. Every bit of it was paid for with money that belonged to someone else, to clients who trusted his company with their funds. And ultimately, since Sterling Crest's stake made it the controlling owner of record, money that flowed back through Andre's own fund. Preston Vaughn had stolen from his clients. He'd stolen from the company. And in doing so, he had stolen from Andre. Andre called Tobias. I've read it, he said. Yeah, Tobias said. Keep going. I want everything documented. Every transfer, every vendor, every receipt. Don't move yet. I want it airtight. Understood, Tobias said. How airtight are we talking? Courtroom airtight, Andre said. He ended the call and set his phone face down on the desk. Outside his window, the city moved in its ordinary way, people coming and going, unaware of anything. He sat still for a long moment and thought about a man in a good suit, building a life out of stolen money, and a woman who had looked at that life and called it the real thing. His phone buzzed. He turned it over. A text from Brianna. I'll be moving my things out by Friday. I think it's time I'm with someone who actually has his life together. I hope you understand. Brianna moved out on a Friday. She didn't ask for help. She had already arranged it. A moving company for the bigger furniture she was taking, and 2 trips in her own car for the rest. Andre stayed out of the way. He made coffee and sat at the kitchen table and watched through the window as she directed the movers with the easy authority of someone who had already mentally left months ago. She looked good. That was the honest truth of it. Her hair was done. She was wearing a cream-colored blouse he didn't recognize. Fitted and expensive-looking. Preston's taste, probably. Or Preston's money. At this point, the two were the same thing. Andre sipped his coffee and said nothing. It was when the movers took a break that she came inside. She moved through the kitchen and looked around, the way you look at a place you've already stopped caring about. Her eyes landed on Andre briefly, then slid away. I left the guest room furniture, she said. I figured you'd want something for when your mother visits. I appreciate that, he said. She opened the cabinet where they kept reusable bags and pulled out the last 2 she wanted. Then she paused at the counter, and he could tell by the way her shoulders settled that she was deciding whether to say something. She decided too. I know this is hard, she said, in a tone that wasn't actually tender. But honestly, Andre, this is better for both of us. You're comfortable doing what you do, and that's fine, but I need more than comfortable. He looked at her. Okay. That wasn't what she wanted. She wanted resistance. Or hurt. Something she could use to justify what she was doing. Preston is taking me to Lisbon in the spring, she said. He has contacts in the European market. He's building something real. A small pause, the kind that was meant to land. I think I just realized too late that I needed to be around that kind of energy. Andre set his mug down on the table. I hope it works out for you, he said. She stared at him for a half-second. Then she smiled. A tight, slightly confused smile like she was waiting for the rest of the sentence, and walked back outside. He watched her finish loading the car. She didn't look back when she drove away. Andre washed his mug, dried it, set it in the cabinet. Then he sat back down at the table and let the quiet of the house settle around him. It was different from the quiet of the last 12 years. This was cleaner, less weighted. It was the quiet of a problem fully defined, which was the necessary condition before a problem could be solved. His phone rang 40 minutes later. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Whitfield? The voice was careful, professional, a woman. My name is Iris Cole. I'm the CFO at Vaughn Creative Media. I think we need to talk. They met 2 days later at a coffee shop 12 blocks from the Vaughn Creative offices. Neutral ground. Iris had chosen the location herself, which told Andre something about her. She was cautious. She had thought about it. She was already seated when he arrived. Early 40s, neat and composed, with the kind of precise posture that came from years of presenting in boardrooms. But her hands were wrapped tightly around her coffee cup, and she had chosen a table in the far corner with a clear line of sight to the door. Andre sat across from her. Thank you for reaching out, he said. She studied him for a moment. You're the Investor Review, she said. The audit request from Sterling Crest. That's you. That's my firm, he said. Standard Due Diligence. She nodded slowly, in a way that said she didn't entirely believe the word standard, but was willing to let it sit there for now. I found the transfers, she said. The Crestline account. I've known about it for about 2 months. I've been trying to figure out what to do. Her voice was steady but stripped down. If this surfaces, when this surfaces, I'm the CFO. My name is on filings. I need someone to understand that I had no part in it. Walk me through what you know, Andre said. She did. She had found the first transfer by accident, running a routine reconciliation. Then she had gone looking and found the rest. Same pattern Raymond Coates had reconstructed from the outside. Only Iris had the internal view. She could see the timestamps, the access logs, the exact accounts Preston had moved money through. She had saved the records quietly to an encrypted personal drive, telling no one, waiting for a moment that felt like the right direction to turn. There's something else. Her voice dropped a register. This isn't the first time he's done something like this. Not the affair piece, I mean the whole pattern. A few years back, before I came on, there was a junior account manager here. Preston got involved with her, told her he was going to leave his wife, that he'd take care of her, that she had a future at the company. Iris looked at her cup. When she started asking questions about some unusual expense approvals she'd noticed, he made her position redundant. She was gone in 3 weeks. Andre let that sit for a moment. Her name? He asked. Maya Okafor, Iris said. She's in Chicago now. I've never spoken to her, but I know people who have. Same story. Same promises. She looked up. He does this. That's what I'm telling you. This is what he does. Andre nodded once. There was nothing to add to that. Iris reached into the bag beside her chair and pulled out a folder. Not thin. It had weight to it. She set it on the table between them and kept her fingers on it for just a moment before she let go. If this comes out, she said, I want it clear I had nothing to do with it. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday. It came through Sterling Crest's official correspondence address, a P.O. box managed by Tobias's office, formatted on heavy cream paper with the Vaughn Creative Media logo embossed at the top. A formal letter from Preston Vaughn's assistant, a woman named Dana, informing the representatives of Sterling Crest Holdings that they were cordially invited to attend the company's upcoming quarterly investor dinner. Thursday, March 6th, the Meridian Club. Cocktails at 7. Tobias called Andre within the hour. He sent it to the box, Tobias said. Not to you personally. He has no idea. I know, Andre said. How do you want to handle the RSVP? Andre was standing at the window of Sterling Crest's private office. The street below was quiet. A delivery truck idled at the corner. Ordinary things. Confirm attendance, he said. One representative. Don't use my name. Use the firm letterhead and keep it generic. That's standard enough. His assistant won't question it. Tobias paused. You're planning to walk in there yourself. It wasn't a question. Yes, Andre said. A short silence on the line. Then Tobias said, Okay, I'll draft the confirmation today. The fraud documentation was nearly complete by that point. Tobias's forensic accountant, a precise and largely humorless man named Gerald Fitch, had spent the better part of 3 weeks reconstructing Preston's embezzlement scheme from both ends. The external audit records Tobias had pulled under investor authority, and the internal files Iris had provided. What Fitch had built was thorough, time-stamped transfers, falsified vendor codes, a spreadsheet that laid out every dollar Preston had moved from Vaughn Creative Media's client retainer accounts into a personal holding account he'd registered under a shell company called Crestline Advisory Group. The total was just under $340,000 across 14 months. Andre had read through the documentation twice, methodically, the way he reviewed any investment report, looking for gaps, inconsistencies, anything that wouldn't hold under scrutiny. There were none. Fitch was good at his job. It was on the second pass that Andre stopped. He was partway through the itemized transfer log, the column that matched each withdrawal to its corresponding downstream expense, when a charge number caught his eye. He cross-referenced it. Then he pulled up a second file from a different folder on his desk. He set them side by side. He looked at them for a long moment. The hotel charge from the shared bank account. The one he had found 2 months ago on a quiet Thursday night while paying bills. The Alderton Hotel, 408 Teals. The night Brianna had told him she was working late. It was in the log. Not just a matching amount. A direct trace. Preston had run the charge through a Crestline vendor code, buried inside a batch of falsified client entertainment expenses. Gerald Fitch had flagged it without knowing what it was. To Fitch, it was just another fraudulent transfer. To Andre, it was something else. He kept reading. The gifts were there, too. A jewelry purchase from a boutique in the Meridian District won $200. A dinner reservation at Castell, the kind of restaurant where the bill came with a sommelier and no printed prices, $640. Weekend at the Alderton a second time, 6 weeks after the first, $503. All of it run through Crestline. All of it traceable back to client retainer funds held in trust at Vaughn Creative Media. Andre closed both files. He sat very still for a moment. The office was quiet. The afternoon light came flat and even through the frosted window. He had known, in the abstract, that Preston's lifestyle was a fabrication. He had known the hotels and the dinners and the promises of Lisbon were paid for with stolen money. But knowing it in the abstract was different from seeing your own account number reflected back at you in a fraud log. Different from understanding that the night Brianna came home smelling like someone else's hotel soap. That specific night, that specific room, had been billed to a client retainer that flowed, ultimately, through Sterling Crest's capital. Preston had used Andre's own money to take his wife. He picked up his phone and called Tobias. "Gerald's log," he said when Tobias answered. "Page 9, transfers 11 through 15. Pull them up." A pause. The sound of keys. Then silence for a few seconds. "Andre." "I know," Andre said. Another pause. "This changes the exposure," Tobias said carefully. "As the fund's managing partner, you have direct standing to—" "I know," Andre said again. His voice was even. "That's why we're not waiting. The dinner is the moment." Tobias was quiet for a beat. Then he shifted into the register he used when things became procedural. Calm, precise, forward-moving. "Then I need a timeline," he said. "Board notification requires 48 hours minimum under the operating agreement. If the dinner is the 6th, I need to file the emergency session request no later than the 4th. "File it," Andre said. "And Tobias, I need 3 things ready before I walk into that room." "Tell me." "Termination documents for Preston Vaughn. A criminal referral packet, ready to go to the DA's office the morning after, and confirmation from Iris that she'll testify before the board." The conference room at Tobias's law firm was small and deliberately plain. No artwork on the walls. A rectangular table with 6 chairs, only 3 of them used. A single overhead light that hummed faintly if the room stayed quiet long enough. It was quiet now. Andre sat at one end of the table. Tobias sat to his left. A stack of tabbed folders in front of him, each one rubber-banded and labeled in his careful handwriting. Iris Cole sat across from them both, her hands folded on the table, a mug of untouched coffee cooling near her elbow. It was 9:17 in the evening. Wednesday. One day before the dinner. Tobias opened the first folder. "Let's go through it in order," he said. "The way it'll be presented tomorrow." He walked them through each piece methodically, the way he always did. No drama, no unnecessary commentary. Just facts, in sequence, building toward something undeniable. The embezzlement records came first. 14 months of irregular transfers, reconstructed and time-stamped by Gerald Fitch. Every dollar Preston had pulled from Vaughn Creative Media's client retainer accounts, funneled through the Crestline Advisory Group shell account, then out into hotel charges and restaurant tabs and a jewelry boutique on the Meridian Strip. Fitch had cross-referenced every withdrawal against corresponding bank statements, and Tobias had attached an affidavit from Fitch himself, signed and notarized that morning, affirming the methodology and accuracy of his findings. $341,000 $218, Tobias said, tapping the summary page. Across 6 client accounts. 2 of them belong to Vaughn's longest-standing retainers. He looked at Iris. You can confirm the client relationships. I managed both accounts personally, Iris said. Her voice was steady. I can speak to the contract terms, the retainer balances, and the point at which the discrepancies began. That was April of last year. April, Andre repeated. He'd already known the number, already knew the month, but hearing it out loud in that room made it concrete in a way the spreadsheet hadn't. April was also when Brianna had started working later, coming home quieter, looking at him across the dinner table like he was a piece of furniture she'd stopped noticing. He didn't say that. He moved on. Next came Iris's signed statement. Tobias slid it across the table so Andre could see it. 4 pages, single-spaced, detailing the financial irregularities Iris had personally identified. The prior affair with the junior employee. The pattern of promises Preston made to women inside the company before discarding them. She had signed every page. A notary stamp appeared at the bottom of the last one. Iris watched Andre read it. I've been sitting on most of that for 8 months, she said. I kept telling myself it wasn't my business, that I'd misread it. She paused. I hadn't. No, Andre said. You hadn't. He set the statement down. And you won't be misread either. Tobias has already confirmed your cooperation with the board filing. Your exposure from the fraud is formally noted as non-participatory. Iris exhaled slowly. Thank you. You earned that, Andre said simply. The third folder contained the prenuptial agreement. It was older than the others, printed on standard paper rather than legal stock, the edges slightly soft from years in a file box. Andre and Brianna had signed it 12 years ago, the summer before their wedding. Tobias had drafted it. He had also kept the original copy. Andre looked at it without picking it up. Sterling Crest is fully protected? He asked. Completely, Tobias said. The language covers all assets held under the fund at the time of signing and any future appreciation. Her attorneys can challenge it, but they won't win. The agreement is clean, properly executed, and witnessed by 2 independent parties. He paused. She has no claim on the fund. None. Andre nodded once. He thought about the conversation Brianna had on the phone 2 weeks ago, the one he'd overheard through the kitchen window while she loaded boxes into her car. She'd been talking to someone, a friend probably, laughing about how Andre would have to split everything down the middle, how she wasn't worried about money, how things were going to be very different soon. She had been picturing the divorce as a windfall. That door was already closed. It had been closed for 12 years. She just hadn't known it. The Brianna question came last. She needs to be there, Andre said. Tobias nodded slowly. I had Dana send a note from Preston's assistant. Easy enough to arrange, since Sterling Crest's RSVP confirmed 2 guests. The dinner invitation went out to Vaughn's senior marketing staff this afternoon as a routine courtesy. Brianna's on that list. He looked at Andre carefully. She'll think it's a company celebration. She has no reason not to come. Good, Andre said. Iris glanced between them but said nothing. The room settled into a brief quiet. The overhead light hummed. 3 people sitting around a plain table, every folder closed, every document signed, every piece of it sealed and ready. Andre sat back in his chair. He breathed out slowly through his nose. For the first time in months, there was nothing left to prepare. Nothing left to verify or cross-reference or second-guess. The weight of all that silent, careful work, the late nights, the controlled silences, the patience it had taken to hold himself steady while his life came apart. It didn't disappear, but it settled. It found a place to rest. Tomorrow, it would all come out into the light. He stood first. He buttoned his jacket, a plain charcoal suit, single-breasted, nothing remarkable about it. The same kind of suit he'd worn for years, The kind of suit a man wore when he didn't need the clothes to say anything on his behalf. Tobias stood across the table, gathering the folders into his briefcase with quiet efficiency. Iris pulled on her coat. Andre picked up his copy of the documentation. He tucked it under his arm. He looked at Tobias. "Let's go remind him," he said, "whose company he actually works for." The lobby of Vaughn Creative Media's headquarters was all glass and polished concrete. Recessed lighting ran along the ceiling in clean white strips. A large company logo, chrome letters against a dark gray wall, faced the entrance. Everything in the building said success in a loud, deliberate way. Andre walked in at 6:58. He wore the same charcoal suit from the night before. No tie, plain black shoes. He carried nothing except his phone and the small folded card in his breast pocket that identified him, formally, as Andre Whitfield, managing partner, Sterling Crest Holdings. Tobias walked beside him, briefcase in hand. A young woman at the welcome table looked up with a practiced smile and asked for their names. "Andre Whitfield," he said. "Sterling Crest Holdings." She found the name on her list. Her smile widened slightly. The way it does when someone important walks in, and you've been told to treat them accordingly. "Of course. Right this way, Mr. Whitfield." The dinner was held in Vaughn Creative Media's main conference suite, a wide room dressed up for the occasion. Round tables draped in white linen. Centerpieces. A small bar cart near the back wall. Maybe 40 people in total. Board members, senior investors, a handful of company executives, and the marketing staff who had been invited as a courtesy. Brianna was already seated at one of the tables near the center of the room. Andre saw her the moment he walked in. She was laughing at something the woman beside her had said. Her wine glass halfway to her lips, relaxed and completely at ease. She hadn't looked toward the door. He didn't slow down. He didn't look away, either. He kept walking. Preston Vaughn was holding court near the front of the room, his back to the entrance, a glass of bourbon in one hand. He was mid-story, shoulders back, voice carrying, performing for the small cluster of board members around him. He wore a navy suit that fit well. His cufflinks caught the light. He turned when his assistant touched his arm and leaned in to say something. Andre watched the exact moment it happened. Preston turned, looked across the room, and found Andre's face. His expression shifted through several things very quickly. Recognition, confusion, and then something that looked like a man trying very hard to locate the ground beneath his feet. The bourbon glass dropped an inch before Preston caught it. He crossed the room. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Whitfield." He extended his hand. "Preston Vaughn. I have to say, it's a genuine pleasure to finally meet the man behind Sterling Crest. We weren't expecting you personally." "I know," Andre said. He shook the hand, firm, brief. Preston laughed quietly, the practiced laugh of someone buying time. "Well, welcome. This is a great evening for the company. Really glad you could make it." "I'm sure you are," Andre said. He moved past him toward his assigned seat at the head table. The dinner went smoothly. Courses came and went. Conversation floated around the room. Andre ate and spoke when spoken to, answered questions about Sterling Crest's direction with calm, measured answers. He was pleasant, unremarkable. Preston watched him from across the room the entire time. Andre could feel it. At 8:15, the board chair, a compact man named Gerald Osei, stood and introduced the quarterly company update, the scheduled portion of the evening where Preston would normally stand up and talk about growth projections and client wins and everything going right. Preston was halfway out of his chair when Andre spoke. "Gerald," his voice was unhurried, "if you don't mind, Sterling Crest has a brief matter to bring to the board's attention before the update." Osei looked at him, then at Tobias, who was already standing, briefcase open, folders in hand. Osei nodded once and sat back down. Andre stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gesture. He spoke the way he always worked, clearly, without excess. He laid it out in order, exactly the way Tobias had walked them through the night before. $341,000 moved from 6 client retainer accounts through a shell entity called Crestline Advisory Group. 14 months of transfers, falsified vendor payments, a forensic audit conducted under Sterling Crest's due diligence authority, verified and signed by Gerald Fitch. He placed the documents on the table in front of O.C. and the 2 other board members seated beside him. Then Iris Cole stood up from her seat near the side wall. She had been there the whole evening. Quiet. Waiting. She confirmed every figure. She spoke for 4 minutes without notes, account numbers, dates, the specific retainer contracts affected. Her voice didn't waver once. The room had gone completely still. Preston stood abruptly. "This is—" He stopped, started again. "These numbers are taken out of context. This is an internal accounting discrepancy. It's being addressed. There's no—" "The transfers are time-stamped and traced to your personal accounts," Andre said. Calm, factual. "The documentation is in front of the board right now." Preston opened his mouth again. Osei held up one hand. He didn't look at Preston. He looked at the documents. The board conferred for less than 6 minutes in lowered voices. Then Osei looked up. "Effective immediately," he said. "Mr. Vaughn is suspended pending a full forensic investigation. Security will assist him out of the building." 2 men in dark jackets appeared at the edge of the room. Preston's voice rose. "You can't? This is my company." "It isn't," Andre said quietly. The room watched as the 2 men moved toward Preston. He was still talking, still insisting, his voice climbing toward something desperate and unconvincing, as they guided him toward the door. It was at that moment that Brianna looked up from her table. She had been watching Preston with wide eyes, tracking his removal across the room, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. And then her gaze traveled forward, past the board table, past the assembled investors, all the way to the front of the room, to the man standing there, in the plain charcoal suit, the one she had called unambitious, the one she had left. Her wineglass was still in her hand. Her face had gone the color of chalk. Andre looked at her. He didn't smile. He didn't look away. He simply let her see him, exactly where he was, exactly who he was, and let that be enough. Brianna moved fast. She cut through the cluster of people near the center tables, her heels sharp against the floor, her face tight with something caught between confusion and fury. The room parted for her. People stepped back, sensing what was coming. She stopped 6 feet from the board table. "Andre!" Her voice came out louder than she probably intended. A few heads turned. "What is going on? Why are you up here?" He looked at her. "Why are you standing up there like you—" She stopped, looked around at the board members, at Tobias, at Iris standing near the wall. "What is this? Sit down, Brianna." "Don't tell me to sit down." She stepped closer, lowering her voice just slightly. "What are you doing here? How do you even know these people?" Andre picked up the small identification card from the table in front of him. He held it so she could read it. Andre Whitfield, Managing Partner, Sterling Crest Holdings. She stared at it, her brow pulled together. "Sterling Crest Holdings," he said, "owns 51% of Vaughn Creative Media. Has for 4 years." He set the card back down. "The company you work for. The company Preston Vaughn has been running into the ground." The silence in the room had weight now. Nobody moved toward the door. Nobody reached for their drink. Even the servers along the back wall had gone still. Brianna's mouth opened, closed. "That's not—" She shook her head. "You don't have— You've never had—" "You never asked," Andre said. Simply, quietly. "You assumed." The words landed without cruelty. That almost made them worse. "For 12 years, he continued, you watched me drive a used truck and work from a home office, and decided that meant I was going nowhere." He wasn't performing. His voice was flat and even, like a man reading from a record he'd already memorized. "You never looked closer. You looked at Preston instead." Her chin lifted slightly. Old reflex. Preston has nothing." He said it the same way he'd said everything else. No heat, no satisfaction, just fact. The hotels, the dinners, the gifts. All of it came from client retainer accounts he was stealing from. $341,000, Brianna. That's what you thought was wealth. That's what you left your marriage for. She went very still. The suit, the penthouse dinners, the promises about what he was going to do for you once he left his wife. Andre paused, just briefly. Paid for with stolen money. Money that flows through this company, through Sterling Crest, back to my fund. He watched her face. He used my money to take my wife to hotel rooms. The color had drained completely from her face now. The wine glass was still in her hand, hanging loose at her side, forgotten. Gerald Osei sat motionless at the board table, his expression carefully neutral. The two other board members beside him had stopped pretending to look at their documents. Brianna's voice came out thin. "Andre, the prenuptial agreement you signed in 2013 is still valid," he said. "Tobias drafted it. Everything tied to Sterling Crest, the fund, the holdings, the equity, is fully protected. The attorneys will walk you through it." She blinked. Something behind her eyes was trying to catch up to what her ears were hearing, and it couldn't get there fast enough. "You can't." She stopped, started again. "You can't just—" "You moved out 8 days ago," Andre said. "You told me you were leaving for someone who had his life together." He let that sit for one beat. "I hope you find what you were looking for." He meant it plainly, not bitterly. That was the worst part. Brianna looked around the room, at the board, at the investors, at Iris Cole standing against the wall with her arms folded, at the faces of the people who had been watching and listening and who now knew everything. Every face told her the same thing. There was no version of this that she walked out of looking like anything other than what she was. A woman who had gambled on a fraud and lost everything she didn't know she had. Her mouth pressed into a line. Her eyes went bright with the early warning of tears she was clearly refusing to let fall. Andre buttoned the single button on his jacket. He looked at Gerald Osei. "The board has everything it needs. Tobias will remain available for any follow-up questions." Osei nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Whitfield." Andre stepped away from the table. He walked past Brianna without stopping. He didn't slow down. He didn't look back. He moved through the quiet room in the same plain charcoal suit he'd worn for 30 years of days that never looked like anything from the outside. Steady, unhurried, exactly himself. The glass doors of Vaughn Creative Media's lobby caught his reflection as he pushed through them. For 1 second, he could see the room behind him. Brianna was still standing where he'd left her, surrounded by people who all knew exactly who she had chosen and exactly what that man had done. Andre walked out into the night. The news broke on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, Preston Vaughn's name was in 3 industry newsletters, 2 financial blogs, and 1 short piece in a regional business journal. The headline in the last one read, "Vaughn Creative Media, CEO suspended amid embezzlement investigation." By Thursday, it had been updated. Suspended became terminated. By the following Monday, it read something worse. Andre read none of it twice. He already knew the numbers. He already knew the names. He'd handed the criminal referral packet to the district attorney's office the morning after the board meeting, and Tobias had filed the civil claims before noon. The rest, the public unraveling, the headlines, the industry gossip, was just the world catching up to what Andre had confirmed weeks ago in a quiet office, with a spreadsheet and a cup of cold coffee. Preston's wife filed for divorce 11 days after the board meeting. Her attorney released a short statement. Preston released nothing. There were photographs of him leaving his own building carrying a cardboard box, taken by someone with a phone and poor timing. Those spread further than any of the articles. Andre saw the photo once, by accident, when a colleague forwarded a news link about the Sterling Crest audit. He looked at it for a moment. Preston in a parking lot, squinting against the light, the box tucked under one arm, and felt nothing sharp. Not satisfaction. Not pity. Just the flat, finished feeling of a thing that was over. He closed the tab and went back to work. Vaughn Creative Media didn't survive the investigation intact. 3 of its largest clients pulled their contracts within the first month. A 4th followed after Iris Cole's testimony became part of the public record. The company's board voted to restructure under new management, and Sterling Crest brought in an interim director while the legal process ran its course. It wasn't the outcome Andre had wanted when he first bought into the company 4 years ago, but it was the honest one. Iris kept her position. She'd earned it. Brianna's name appeared in none of the official documents. She hadn't embezzled anything. She hadn't signed anything fraudulent. But the industry was small, and the people who'd been in that room talked, the way people in rooms like that always do. Word moved quietly through marketing circles. A woman who'd left her husband for a CEO who turned out to be a fraud, paid for with stolen company funds. Nobody said it loudly. Nobody had to. She applied to 3 firms in the first 6 weeks. Andre knew because Tobias mentioned it. Not to gloat. Just as information. None of them called her back. The divorce was finalized on a gray Thursday in November. Andre sat across a conference table from her attorney, and Brianna sat beside him, and nobody raised their voice because there was nothing left to argue about. The prenuptial agreement held exactly as Tobias had written it. Sterling Crest was untouched. The house was sold and split according to the terms they'd agreed on 14 years ago, before either of them knew what the next 14 years would look like. Brianna didn't look at him during the signing. He didn't look at her either. Not out of anger. There was just nothing left that required looking at. He signed where Tobias indicated. He shook the other attorney's hand. He walked out into the gray November air, got into his truck, and drove to a diner 3 blocks away, where he ate eggs and toast and read through a prospectus for a new investment he'd been considering. His coffee went cold before he finished it. He left a good tip and drove back to the office. 6 months after the board meeting, Andre drove the familiar hour and 15 minutes to his mother's house on a Saturday afternoon. Loretta met him at the door before he could knock. She had that way about her, some internal alarm that fired whenever his tires hit her street. She pulled him in, fed him more food than he asked for, and didn't bring up Brianna or Preston or any of it until the dishes were done and they were sitting on the porch in the long evening light. The neighborhood was quiet. A sprinkler ticked somewhere down the block. The sky had gone that soft orange-pink that only lasts about 10 minutes before it fades to gray. Loretta set her glass of iced tea on the rail and looked at him sideways. "You know what I never told you?" she said. "Probably a lot of things." She made a short sound that was almost a laugh. "I used to worry about your patience." She folded her hands in her lap. "When you were young, you'd get knocked down and you'd just go quiet. And I'd think, that boy needs to say something, needs to fight back. Thought the quiet was going to be a problem for you." Andre watched the sprinkler down the block arc and fall and arc again. "Turns out," Loretta said, "I had it backwards." He didn't answer right away. "The patience wasn't the weakness," she said. "It was the whole thing. That was always you." Andre turned that over slowly. The way you turn over something you've carried a long time and finally set down somewhere, you can actually see it. He looked out at the street. The pink had gone out of the sky. The light was softer now, dimmer, easier to sit in. He thought about the hotel charge on a laptop screen, the cap table, the folder Iris handed him, the boardroom, the glass doors, and Brianna's reflection getting smaller as he walked away. He thought about all the years he'd been underestimated by the person who was supposed to know him best. And for the first time since all of it started, he didn't feel the quiet ache of that. He just felt the truth of it, clean and settled, like a fact that no longer needed defending. He leaned back in the chair. The evening had gone fully soft around them, and the street was still, and somewhere down the block, the sprinkler kept its quiet, steady rhythm. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.